To look towards the future, we must first turn to the past. And the best way to do that is to tune into another episode of TDNY, This Day Not Year, the podcast that looks at the history of the week ahead. Hello everyone, I'm still your host Adam, and we've got another 7 stories, stale from the past, ready for the week ahead, and 7 songs to pair these stories with. So, as a little taster, today we'll learn what the safest way to clean petrol from a basement is, and the most dangerous. Why a red-hot pistol slam could have been Australian tradition. If Rich Uncle Pennybags wore a top hat. Why this Tokio drift is an environmental hazard, and a whole lot more along the way. So let's dive into Monday, the 10th of February. On this day, not year, you decide to start your day off slow. Perhaps wander down to the local cinema and catch the latest movie. What's the worst that can happen as you while away your morning enjoying Hollywood's latest? Incidentally, the movie of the day is The Return of a Man Called Horse, advertised with the rather outdated warning. The Indian ritual scenes in this film may offend. Outdated? Well, by today's standards maybe. But this is 1976, and you're in Canberra, Australia. You watch, rapt, as the titular man named Horse has his pecs pierced by eagle talons and is hung upside down. But something draws you out of the movie. What is that you smell? Is that petrol? Well, management shall hear of this. Only they already know, and they blame the service station across the road. But is the smell getting stronger? Is it coming from within the building? And what of the 2 plumbers that just went down into the basement with welding gear? Suddenly your quiet morning is blown away as an explosion rocks the building and the automatic sprinkler system kicks into gear against the now growing fire. Yes, on this day in 1977, the Centre Cinema on Bunda Street, Canberra, exploded. Despite the dramatisation at the top, nothing was actually playing at 11:45 a.m., the time of the explosion. But of the 2 plumbers, one was killed in the blast, and the second severely wounded as he was knocked off his feet and sent flying backwards, slamming hard, ironically, into the fire safety door. The Centre Cinema, that's Centre ER in the American fashion, as the owner, Darryl Killen, thought too many centres, RE, had been opened recently, and didn't want to copy that trend. First opened October 5th, 1965, with a premiere of Dr. Zhivago, Centre Cinema was an underground theatre capable of seating 500 viewers in the Continental Plan. That's without centre or cross aisles, making for a real toe-treading experience getting to and from your seat. But back to the 10th of February 1977. The near-constant smell of petrol had been a problem at the cinema for a while now. Although it was suspected the mobile service station across the road was to blame, every time inspectors were called in to investigate, they couldn't find the source. In reality, the mobile company was not only well aware of the leak, the owner of that particular service station reporting a loss of over 6,000 litres of petrol just 5 months prior in September, with an estimated 32,000 litres total that had seeped into the ground. Mobile had done their own testing and sampling to confirm the leaks. They just didn't inform Centre Cinema. So, on this day, when plumbers Colin Mills and Malcolm Woodbury went down to fix a pump, the flame from their welding torch ignited the leaking petrol, and Colin would die in the subsequent blast. One of the first responders, a senior constable Mark Billowell, would go on to receive a commendation for bravery, rushing into the basement wading through water, petrol, and hanging wires, all the while dealing with smoke, fumes, and the very real risk of electrocution, all in the search for survivors. With victims retrieved and fire extinguished, this still left litres of petrol in a layer up to 15 centimetres deep floating around the basement and cinema. Firefighters had to resort to using plastic scoops, fearing metal may spark the debris and set everything on fire. They removed between 318 and 364 litres of petrol, all carefully scooped into plastic drums. The fire destroyed much of the cinema, and it had to be closed for refurbishing. When it opened again in 1978, it started screening late-night Sunday Hong Kong and Taiwanese movies, which were attended by a couple, Charles and Lily Chan, who worked nearby at the United States Embassy. Perhaps these movies were so special to them as their son was an actor. In fact, one of his movies also came out around this time, Drunken Master, starring Jackie Chan, the son of Charles and Lily Chan. While it may not be a perfect fit, the best song I can think of for this is 1983 hit by Talking Heads, Burning Down the House. The line, "No visible means of support," does describe the cinema centre quite well, as it was built in such a fashion that didn't require visible central pillars. That's my reasoning, and I'm sticking with it. Tuesday, February the 11th, and on this day, not year, Nelson Mandela was released from prison. Now hang on, some of you might be saying, didn't he die in prison? Well, born July 18th, 1918, Mandela fought for equality between races across South Africa, first against colonialism, getting involved with the ANC, that's African National Congress, and starting up a youth league of the ANC, and then fighting against apartheid from its conception in 1948. Apartheid was a system of racial segregation and discrimination used to vastly benefit the minority white population to the detriment of the native black Africans. This is, of course, a massive understatement to what actually occurred, and is skimming over a lot of important history and political issues, but we'll save all that for another day. In 1962, Mandela was arrested, charged with high treason, inciting riots and strikes, and leaving the country. He was sentenced to life in prison. It's here that the memory of some people gets a little hazy. They believe that he died in prison during the 1980s while locked away as a political prisoner and victim of apartheid. Of course, this event never occurred, and he was not only released from prison, but went on to serve as president. This false memory situation has come to be known as the Mandela effect, as per medicalnewstoday.com. The Mandela effect refers to widespread false memories that large numbers of people or a group of individuals believe. They may be harmless, but can also support conspiracy theories or political agendas. This name was coined by Fiona Broome, who remembered Mandela dying in prison and found hundreds of other people around the world who shared that same memory. While it may be named after Nelson Mandela, the Mandela effect has covered more false memories than just that. Let's look at a few more, shall we? Do you remember the Berenstain Bears growing up? What if I told you you don't? While many people remember them Berenstain, E-I-N, they were actually the Berenstain, A-I-N Bears. Another example is the classic Star Wars line, "Luke, I am your father," uttered by Darth Vader. Surely this can't be wrong, right? You know that line. You've seen the movie. That's what he said. Well, wrong again. The line is, "No, I am your father." One final example, found in that holiday-ruining game Monopoly. Picture Rich Uncle Pennybags. That's the name of the Monopoly guy, before he was just renamed Mr. Monopoly. Top hat, monocle, big white moustache, and holding a cane. Only, one from that list is false. Many claim to remember him sporting a monocle, but Rich Uncle Pennybags never wore one. While Fiona Broome claimed these were possible examples of a multiverse, with the changed memories being from a reality that had collapsed back into our own, with some keeping the memories of the other world, in reality the Mandela effect is an example of something called a false memory. One trend that went around the internet a few years ago was a great example of a false memory. The trend, known as "You When You Were a Baby," involved showing a young child a video of a dancing puppet elf, telling them that it was a video of themselves and asking if they remembered it. A lot of them said yes, claiming to remember the time when they were a dancing little elf puppet man. This is an example of something called the lost in the mole procedure, where a subject is told a false story of them becoming lost in a shopping mall when younger. In one test, nearly a quarter believed the story, claiming to remember the event despite it never happening, with some even offering up more details of the false narrative. Another explanation is that we tend to remember the familiar and expected, but forget inconsistencies. For example, let's say you have a memory of visiting a butcher shop to buy something for dinner when you were younger. You may remember all the different meats, the smells, maybe even the butcher in an apron. But the campaign poster for a local politician stuck to the window, that had no hope of sticking in your memory. So, when you think of a political prisoner, locked away for life, maybe a natural assumption is that they will die in prison. Memory is an interesting thing. It's always separated from reality, and each time you recall a memory, you are actually recalling your last recollection of it, not the original event. Meaning each time you change it a little here, overwrite it a little there. It's your brain playing the game of telephone with you, only you won't even know what's happening. So, can you really trust your memories? Think about a loved one's face. Can you remember their eye color? The shape of their nose? Do they have freckles or not? Are you sure? Can you really remember? The most fitting song today is Song 1, Stage 1, It's Just a Burning Memory, from the Everywhere at the End of Time concept album by ambient musician The Caretaker. This album is broken into 6 stages, with each stage representing the further decline of a person suffering from dementia. The music in Stage 1 samples old ballroom classics, music just on the edge of recollection, but definitely music. It echoes around as the static crackles and pops behind the notes. But by Stage 6 the music is distant, sometimes non-existent. Notes are held longer than needed, stretched out, while the music they represent is now unrecognizable. Although the full album clocks in at over 6 hours, if you've ever the time, I can thoroughly recommend the full thing. Right, racing along to Wednesday, February 12th. And on this day, not year, we are going to look at the 1908 New York to Paris race. Have you ever heard of the Wacky Racers cartoon from 1968? 11 cars of different themes and styles compete in a variety of races across America, while the drivers sabotage their opponents and gimmick their way to victory each episode. If you can picture that, but in real life, you are close to the chaos that this race brought. Sponsored by 2 newspapers, the American New York Times and the French Le Matin, 10 teams registered for the race, 4 French, 2 American, 2 Portuguese, 1 German and 1 Italian. The Italian was a winner of a similar endurance race held the year prior, Peking to Paris. His prize for winning was a magnum of champagne, which was probably well received, as he had been forced to drink oil-tainted water from his radiator during the race. The day the race was to start, February 12th, only 6 cars actually showed up. 3 French teams driving cars manufactured by De Dion Bouton, Motorbloc and César Nadine, 1 German driving a Protoss, the Italian champ with his Zust, and an American, supposedly at the bequest of President Roosevelt, driving a Thomas Flyer. The route for the race would have the team starting out in New York, travelling across America, through a lot of the country where the dirt road was still the most advanced automotive structure. From there, they were supposed to reach San Francisco and start up north to Alaska via boat. Then they would traverse across Alaska before driving to Russia, a quick jaunt through to Moscow, and then straight on to Paris after. Now, those geographically minded may be seeing a problem with this proposed route, this car route, specifically the rather large body of water inconveniencing the proposed course. But those organising the race had thought of this, and that's why it was held in winter. It was believed that the Bering Strait between Alaska and Russia would be frozen over, and the cars could simply drive across. All in all, this race was supposed to be around 22,000 miles long. To help put some context into just how long this race was going to be, if you cast your mind back to our speedy friend Walter Arnold from 1896 and episode 3, he had a top speed of 8 miles per hour. So for him to complete this race, he'd need to drive for 114 days straight, no stops, no sleep. Or perhaps for an example closer to home. As of 1908, the speed record for driving between Melbourne and Adelaide was 28 hours and 40 minutes. So, on this day, back in 1908, the cars lined up and waited. And waited. And waited. The person responsible for starting the race, by firing a golden pistol, was running late. Eventually, fed up with waiting, the pistol was grabbed and fired without him, and the race was off. The American leg of the trip saw the teams making slow progress as they shoveled snow, repaired their cars each night, got lost, asked for directions, and were often given wrong instructions. After just 96 miles, one of the French cars, the César Nadine, had already broken down and had to forfeit. As those remaining slowly made their way across America, they found many locals gave preferential treatment to the American Thomas, while deliberately hindering the other racers. The American team, at times, would even drive along train tracks when the line was clear, an advantage denied to the others. Likely due to all of this, the Thomas soon had a commanding lead and was well on its way towards the Alaskan leg of the race before the others. Another of the French cars, the Moto Block, was caught cheating, attempting to ship the car on a train as freight, and was told to forfeit by the owners when they were caught. With just 4 left in the race, the American Thomas discovered that the proposed route across the Bering Strait was in fact impossible. A telegram from the Times stating, "The route mapped out is now in impossible condition, owing to the break-up of the cold weather, and the motorists have arranged to take boat to Vladivostok in Siberia." This was a great boon for the Italian, German, and remaining French team, as they could leave almost right away, while the American team, in the lead, had to backtrack, and even then had to organize their passports. Eventually, the race committee decided to give the American team a 15-day reduction, owing to the course change. En route to Vladivostok, the cars had to drive across Japan first. But the German Protoss skipped this step, plus their own freight drama, saw them penalized with an additional 30 days added to their current total. Across Russia, the progress was slow going, and the final French car, the TDNY, had to drop out over gasoline supply issues. Eventually, the German Protoss was the first to arrive in Paris on July 26, 1908, over 5 months since the race had started. The clock was now ticking for the American and Italian cars, both still in with a chance due to the penalty on the German car. 4 days later, the American Thomas limped into Paris, making it the ultimate winner. The Italian Zoost could only hope for second place now, although victory was nearly cut short for the Thomas, as a policeman noted they had lost their headlights during the journey, and it was illegal to drive without them. Facing arrest, someone in the crowd offered up his bicycle, complete with headlight, as an impromptu replacement. It took 2 more months for the Italian Zeus to arrive, officially giving it 3rd place. The American Thomas Flyer, driven by Monty Roberts and George Schuster, was presented with the prize, a 700-kilogram trophy, made from Italian and French marble, German bronze and American silver, to represent all the countries that took part. If the 1908 New York to Paris story did interest you, I recommend looking up a full retelling of the tale. The complete story has even more twists, turns, betrayals and deceptions in it than I could cover. So, to conclude this tale, let me suggest a song for the occasion. The Trail We Blaze by Elton John from the movie The Road to El Dorado. A song about charting a new path through terra incognita, unexplored territory, something the drivers literally had to do for much of their 20,000-plus mile journey. Strange things tend to wash up on beaches. Canadian shores are known for shod human feet drifting ashore. Alaskan beaches were once swathed in fly swats, while North Carolina was beset by beach Dorito corn chips. But our story for Thursday the 13th of February puts us on the shore of England this day, not year. Specifically, Cornwall. Since 1997, many strange things have been known to wash ashore here. Cutlasses, daisies, dragons, octopodes, scuba gear, just to name a few. All of these oddities share a strange similarity, besides where they came ashore, and that is what they are made of. Yes, unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, these weren't real dragons beaching themselves on the Cornish seaside, but plastic. To explain why, we need to move away from the shore and swim a leisurely 32 kilometers out to sea, towards a large container ship known as Tokio Express. That's Tokio, T-O-K-I-O. Nothing to do with Japan. This ship was built in Hamburg, Germany. The Tokio Express was a sizable ship, 287 meters long, 32 meters wide, and capable of hauling 49,532 tons of cargo. Well, it's hard to properly envision the length of the ship. Hopefully this will help. It was nearly as long as 3 Olympic 100-meter sprint tracks put together. Okay, maybe not too helpful. Sorry for trying to help. On this day, it was making a cargo run to New York City when it was struck, quite literally, out of the blue, by what the captain described as a once-in-a-lifetime 100-foot freak wave. The massive water slammed into the boat, and even with all the weight it carried, the force of the wave was enough to rock it 60 degrees one way, 40 degrees back the other, before settling down. If you can't quite picture what 60 degrees looks like, let me tell you that Michael Jackson's Smooth Criminal Lean was only 45 degrees. After getting struck by, a 100-foot freak wave, the cargo containers that had been neatly stacked aboard the ship were in disarray. Some had toppled over like dominoes, others had crashed down across the deck, while several were even hanging precariously over the ship's side, while 62 of them had just dropped down right into the ocean. This is classed as a catastrophic loss, when more than 50 cargo crates are lost at once. But it is a rare occurrence. It's estimated that each year around 1,300 containers are lost at sea. A harrowing thought for those who try their luck by hitching rides inside international cargo. I can't say what 61 of the 62 crates were carrying, but I can tell you what one of them had. Exactly 4,756,940 pieces of Lego. Yes, this container, cracking open as it was waved overboard, was responsible for the assorted plastic pieces washing up in Cornwall. By pure happenstance, much of the Lego contained in the cracked cargo was for aquatic sets, Lego Pirates and Lego Aquazone. Since the 1997 Lego spill, the plastic toys have been slowly making their way, aided by ocean currents, around the world. The first shark from the set was recovered in 2024 in Devon, England, while pieces have also found their way to Ireland, Belgium, and even those in Australia and America have been told to keep an eye out for it now. It's estimated that it will take over 1,000 years for the pieces to break down, so it's likely that they will make their way around the world, littering beaches for centuries to come. Maybe not the long-lasting legacy Danish company Lego wanted to leave for the world. In my eyes, the perfect song for this story is We Have Fed Our Seas by David Coffin, with lyrics taken from the poem The Song of the Dead by Rudyard Kipling. It tells of life and death for sailors on the sea, and all those lives lost on it, fed to it. We must feed our sea for 1,000 years, for that is our doom and pride. An ironic line for the 1,000-year lifespan of the drifting Lego. Friday, 14th of February, and on this day, not year, a class from the Wooreen State School of South Gippsland, Victoria, had gone on an hour-long nature trip. At least, that's what a note left on the door of 20-year-old Mr. Robert Hunter's classroom read. Only the note had been first noticed at midday, and by school pick-up at 3 p.m, the teacher and his 9 students still weren't back. When the class still hadn't returned hours later, and search groups consisting of police and locals on foot, horse and motorbikes turned up nothing, authorities turned their mind to an eerily similar case from 5 years earlier. "It is a possibility that it could be a repetition of Faraday," stated Mick Miller, the Assistant Commissioner for Crimes. October 1972. 2 armed men burst into a small school in Faraday, 108 kilometres outside of Melbourne, Victoria, bundled the 6 students and 20-year-old teacher up, and drove them away in a van. "You're not going to kill us, are you?" one of the students asked, and was answered with, "We have nothing to gain by killing you." And then again, nothing to lose either. After that, the duo parked in a specially pre-dug trench 60 kilometres out of town and began welding the doors of the van shut, locking the teacher and students in. The kidnappers made demands of $1 million for their safe return and left instructions on where to drop the money. While the kidnappers were away, attempting to collect the ransom, the teacher, Mary Gibbs, began kicking at the welded door, aided by her heeled platform boots. A panel popped loose, and all were able to squeeze out into the dark of night. Luckily, they ran into some rabbit hunters a few kilometres away, and were given a lift back to town. The 2 kidnappers, Robert Clyde Boland and Edwin John Eastwood, were caught at their own houses back in Melbourne. For the crime, Mr. Boland was sentenced to 16 years in jail, while Mr. Eastwood only got 15. Back to 1977, and the similarities between the 2 cases was striking. But perhaps the most damning thing was that in December the year prior, Edwin John Eastwood had escaped from jail and was still on the run. It would indeed turn out that this was Eastwood's second attempt at a kidnapping and ransom, although this one wouldn't go to plan either. Around 11 a.m. on the 14th of February 1977, Eastwood approached the Wooreen School with a gun and bag in hand. The students, outside at recess, ran back in and told Mr. Hunter that someone was outside with a gun. Mr. Hunter, who had only been a teacher for 8 days, told the students that, "If this is a joke, I don't think it's very funny." No one was laughing as Eastwood entered the building, with gun in hand, chained all the students up, saying, "Don't do anything stupid, or I'll shoot you kids. I'm not a bad man, but as long as you do what I say, you'll be okay." With that, the kids were thrown into the back of a Holden Ute, while Mr. Hunter was forced down into the passenger footwell, and they were off, pausing only for Eastwood to mail off his new list of demands, which read, "Greetings, maggot! Round 2. This time my demands are US $7 million, 100 kilos of pure cocaine, and 100 kilos of heroin, automatic weapons, an escape vehicle, and the release of these 17 prisoners." They had made it 70 kilometres from the school when the comedy of errors began. Rounding a corner, Eastwood crashed into an oncoming truck. Fortunately, no one was injured, although the two in the truck, Robin Smith and his younger brother, were forced to join the kids as hostages. Before they could get away, a second truck drove by, stopping to see if the two occupants could help. And they too were added to the growing collection, now numbering 14 hostages. Eastwood was starting to come logistically unstuck. Fortunately, luck was on his side after all, and a combi van drove by, containing 50-year-old Joy and Muriel, returning from a camping holiday. Stopping to see what the fuss between a ute and two trucks was, they were met by the barrel of Eastwood's gun and added to the collection. Now, with everyone piled into the combi van, they were off again, making it to an isolated camping spot nearly 170 kilometers out of town. There, everyone was tied up, and eventually all started to fall asleep. Even the kidnapper, Mr. Eastwood, had a little nap around 4 a.m., which is when Robin Smith, the first truck driver, managed to work himself free and slink away into the night. He made it to a house around 6 a.m. and began banging on the door for help. The startled resident inside, Frank, later recollected, "I wondered what the hell was going on, and the man kept asking me to telephone the police. He told me that a man was holding a group of school children and adults captive in the bush. I then telephoned the police at Yarram and let him explain what had happened." While the police were speeding towards Frank and Robin, Eastwood had awoken, panicked at the missing hostage, and bundled everyone back into the combi van. The comedy of errors continued, and just as Eastwood was leaving the bush, the police were pulling up. This led to a rolling gun battle, as police pulled alongside the van, were shot at, pulled back, attempted to shoot out the tires. One of the kidnapped children in the van, Josephine, said of the car chase, "We saw police cars alongside us, and the driver shot at them several times." While Rohan, in typical male fashion, recollected, "The girls screamed when the bullets were hitting the car." Eventually, a tyre was struck and the van was forced to a stop. Erupting from the driver's door, Eastwood came out shooting, but was instead hit in the leg, fell over, and was detained. The kidnapped victims were all safe, physically, and the school children were even given a week off school to recover. As for Eastwood, he was sentenced with over 23 new charges, ranging from kidnapping to grand theft auto, and was sent back to jail. Eventually, he was released in 1992 and became a truck driver, of all things. My song pairing for this story is Cage the Elephant's Ain't No Rest for the Wicked. Ironically, in our story, the wicked resting was their undoing. Recently, NASA has doubled the chance that asteroid 2024 YR4 will collide with the Earth in 2032, raising it from 1.3% odds to 2.3% odds. For this Saturday 15th of February story, we have a space rock with even higher odds of colliding with the Earth. A 100% chance, in fact. This is a story of the 2013 Chelyabinsk meteor. February 15th, and a 30-meter wide asteroid, 367943 Duende, was predicted to have its nearest approach to Earth later that day, just scraping by at 27,000 kilometers away. So all eyes were on it. Unfortunately, this meant another meteor was fast approaching, unknown and unwatched. At about 9:20 a.m., the 18-meter wide meteor entered the atmosphere over the 7th largest Russian city, Chelyabinsk, traveling around 19 kilometers per second. A quick aside, this is about 43,000 miles per hour, or quick enough to have completed the New York to Paris race in a little over half an hour. The meteor was caught on videos in dash cams and security cameras across Chelyabinsk, Russia. In the sky, it appeared as a large, bright ball of fire, and then it exploded. This is known as a meteor airburst. As the meteor enters the atmosphere, it compresses and heats up the air and molecules in front of it. This is called ram pressure. Once this reaches a critical point, the meteor can't keep up with the ram pressure applied to it, and something has to give. This resulting give generates enormous heat and pressure, which blasts out around it. The most powerful recorded meteor airburst also happened in Russia, the 1908 Tunguska event. This event toppled an estimated 80 million trees and fueled conspiracy theories for over a century after. The Chelyabinsk explosion occurred an estimated 30 kilometers above the ground and exploded with the force of around 440,000 tons of TNT, or about 30 times the energy of the little boy bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Fortunately, a lot of this energy was dispersed in the atmosphere. If the 18-meter, 9,000-ton rock had made it to Earth intact, this would be an entirely different story. Unfortunately, this was still a lot of energy, and it dispersed in an ear-splitting shockwave that washed over the city. If you go to YouTube and type in Chelyabinsk meteor shockwave, you can find videos of the exact moment the shockwave reached the city. Windows smashed, walls toppled, doors were blown in, buildings shook, car alarms the city over sounded off. In total, over 1,600 people were injured, mostly from broken glass, and over 7,000 buildings reported damage. Some people even reported that they were burned from the immense heat released by the airburst, even though it occurred 30 kilometers above the ground, suffering sunburn-like symptoms. Fortunately, the airburst split the meteor into small enough meteorites that no significant damage was caused by the falling rocks. The largest piece, weighing in at 654 kilograms, fell harmlessly onto a frozen lake and sunk to the bottom. All in all, this is probably a best-case scenario for an unabsorbed meteor entering our atmosphere over a populated area. I think the most appropriate song for this story is best expressed in the opening lines of this Jerry Lee Lewis hit. You shake my nerves and you rattle my brain. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. Something unprecedented for Sunday the 16th of February, as on this day every year we celebrate National Tim Tam Day. The Tim Tam is likely known to almost everyone in Australia. It's up there with Vegemite and Lamingtons in terms of food pride. For those out of the loop, Wikipedia describes this biscuit thusly. It consists of two malted biscuits, separated by a light, hard chocolate cream filling, and coated in a thin layer of textured chocolate. While I can't find an exact starting year for Tim Tam Day, it seems to have come about around 2017, about the same time the biscuit started selling in America. The day is endorsed by Arnott's, maker of the Tim Tam biscuits, with their marketing manager stating in 2020, National Tim Tam Day is an opportunity each year to celebrate Aussie's love affair with their favourite chocolate biscuit. And it is our favourite biscuit, chocolate or otherwise. Of the 8 billion biscuits sold by Arnott's in the year 2024, the clear favourite was Tim Tams. Coming in second, third and fourth were barbecue shapes, chicken crimpy shapes and pizza shapes respectively. So, it's clear that we love these chocky bickies. But, do we know their history? For that, we need to go back to 1958, when Ian Norris, then head of food technology at Arnott's, went on a worldwide fact-finding trip. His aim? To find new ideas and flavours for Arnott's. How's that for a job, eh? His trip saw him to Britain, trying a penguin biscuit. Now, for those that don't know, a penguin is a chocolate-covered biscuit with a chocolate cream filling. Sound familiar? Ian Norris reportedly said of the penguin, "That was not a bad idea for a biscuit. We'll make a better one." Now, it just needed a new name. For that, we have Ross Arnott and a horse to thank. Ross was in America for the 1858 Kentucky Derby, and took a shine to the name of the winning horse. To find out the winner, allow me to do a bit of historical race calling. Tim Tam's coming up fast to challenge Lincoln Road, the 45-1 long shot. Lincoln Road on the rails is losing ground, and jockey Valenzuela on Tim Tam is riding the race of his life. In the last few yards he's made it, and Tim Tam wins by half a length. That was fun. Yes, the biscuit we know today was named after the winning horse of the Derby from that year. Other horses in the race were Flamingo, Chance It Tony, a Dragon Killer, Red Hot Pistol, Gone Fishin', and Ebony Pearl, just to name a few. Probably for the best Tim Tam won. It could be a very different world if people were doing red hot pistol slams with their chocolate biscuits. There's only one song I could find for this story, and really, once I'd listened to it, it was the only song that was ever needed. The Tam Slam by Oxo Cubans. A great listen and a very instructional song. That felt like a long one. Did that feel like a long one for you too? Regardless, we've made it through to the end of another week and another episode of TDNY, This Day Not Year. Hopefully you learned something new along the way and had some fun too. I'll be back next week as we look ahead to the history of the 17th to the 23rd of February. As per usual, send any feedback or glaring errors along to thisdaynotyear@gmail.com, and I'll see you again next week. Cheers!